The unbroken line. Sound of a phone ringing, insistent and sharp. June 4th, 2025. Vatican City, 9:02 p.m. local time. The red light on the secure line pulsed. A silent, urgent beacon in the dimly lit papal study. Pope Leo XIV, his expression calm but resolute, reached out, his hand steady as he lifted the receiver. Thousands of miles away, nestled within the ancient, formidable walls of the Kremlin, another hand, equally accustomed to the weight of power, lifted a corresponding phone. The connection, against all odds, was made. For over 2 years, an almost impenetrable wall had stood between the spiritual heart of the Catholic Church and the halls of power in Moscow. It wasn't merely a diplomatic chill. It was a deliberate, almost absolute cessation of direct, high-level communication. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022, President Vladimir Putin had steadfastly refused any direct calls from the previous pontiff, Pope Francis. The last recorded instance of Putin speaking with the head of the Catholic Church dated back to December 17, 2021, a fleeting birthday wish to Pope Francis just months before the cataclysm of war ignited across Eastern Europe. This consistent refusal underscored a profound diplomatic freeze, a calculated distancing from the Vatican's increasingly urgent pleas for an end to hostilities and a return to peace. The strained relations were painfully evident on solemn occasions. When Pope Francis passed from this world, Putin was conspicuously absent from the funeral. And when Leo XIV ascended to the chair of Peter, the Russian minister intended to represent him at the installation never arrived, reportedly due to insurmountable air travel difficulties. Instead, it was the Russian ambassador to the Holy See, Ivan Soltanovsky, who represented the Russian delegation at the inaugural Mass, a stark, almost symbolic representation of the deep fissures in relations. Even the dedicated, tireless efforts of Cardinal Matteo Zuppi, dispatched by the late Pope Francis as his special envoy for humanitarian issues, had met with only limited success. Cardinal Zuppi, a figure renowned for his immense compassion and nuanced diplomatic skill, was granted an audience only with a presidential advisor in Moscow. The more senior doors, those leading to the highest levels of power, remained firmly shut. The Vatican's consistent, unwavering offers of its good offices to facilitate negotiations, even going so far as to propose itself as a neutral venue for talks between the warring sides, had been publicly dismissed, even mocked, by Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov. He famously scoffed, stating it was not fitting that two Orthodox states should discuss their problems in a Catholic state. All these preceding events paint a clear, unambiguous picture of Moscow's entrenched reluctance, even outright refusal, to engage directly with the Holy See on the agonizing conflict in Ukraine. Given this entrenched backdrop of diplomatic froideur, of 2 years of icy silence and pointed non-engagement, today's conversation between President Putin and Pope Leo XIV truly comes as a profound, almost stunning surprise. At the very moment of this broadcast, the crucial detail of who initiated the call, whether it was the spiritual leader or the political strongman, remains unclear, adding yet another layer of intrigue and speculation to this momentous, unprecedented exchange. The first words, two worlds, two truths in dialogue. News of the call broke almost simultaneously, radiating from both Moscow and the Vatican, each carefully crafting their public narrative, meticulously selecting their words to reflect their distinct priorities and perspectives on the ongoing conflict. The Russian news agency Interfax was among the first to report the significant development, quickly followed by official confirmation from the Holy See. From the quiet dignity of the Holy See, Matteo Bruni, the director of the press office, delivered the Vatican's official statement. His words resonated with the pontiff's consistent, unwavering plea for peace, a message that has defined the Vatican's stance since the conflict began. Bruni conveyed that the Pope made an appeal for Russia to make a gesture that would favor peace, emphasizing the importance of dialogue to create positive contacts between the parties in conflict and seek solutions to the conflict. This precise phrasing, issued at 9:02 p.m. local time, perfectly encapsulates the Vatican's approach. An appeal grounded in profound moral authority, urging tangible, concrete action towards de-escalation and genuine negotiation. The emphasis on dialogue for positive contacts speaks volumes, reflecting the Holy See's fundamental, almost theological, belief that open communication, even between the most entrenched adversaries, is the indispensable first step towards any form of lasting resolution. But the Kremlin's account, while confirming the call's occurrence, offered a starkly different framing, a narrative designed to serve its own strategic objectives. According to ANSA, the main Italian news agency, quoting Interfax, Vladimir Putin expressed appreciation in a phone call with the Pope for his willingness to help resolve the Ukrainian crisis. This seemingly conciliatory tone from Putin, suggesting a receptive ear to the Pope's overtures, was, however, immediately followed by a firm, unyielding reiteration of Russia's established grievances and justification for its actions. Corriere della Sera, the prominent Italian daily, reported that the Kremlin described the conversation as constructive, a carefully chosen word for Moscow, implying a positive exchange. Yet, in the very same breath, the Kremlin's statement asserted that President Putin, in his conversation with the Holy Father, stressed that Kiev's deliberate and targeted attack on civilians can clearly be defined as terrorism. The words hung in the air, a profound and unmistakable contrast. One side spoke unequivocally of peace and dialogue, urging reconciliation. The other spoke chillingly of terrorism and the necessity of eliminating root causes. The very definition of the problem at hand, the fundamental understanding of the conflict's origins and its current state, differed so profoundly between the two leaders, making the path to any shared, lasting solution incredibly complex, fraught with obstacles, and potentially requiring immense concessions from either side. Humanity's plea: bridging divides for prisoners and children. Beyond the intricate dance of geopolitical sparring and contrasting narratives, a crucial and deeply compassionate element of the conversation, and indeed of the Vatican's enduring engagement in global affairs, centered unequivocally on the urgent humanitarian situation unfolding in Ukraine. Bruni confirmed that the two leaders talked about the humanitarian situation, the need to favor aid where necessary, the continuous efforts for the exchange of prisoners, and the value of the work that Cardinal Zuppi is doing in this regard. This was not just a diplomatic talking point. For the Vatican, it was the very heart of the matter. This unwavering focus on humanitarian issues is not a new development for the Holy See. It is a foundational pillar of its foreign policy. Both Pope Francis and now Pope Leo XIV have consistently prioritized the alleviation of human suffering above all political or strategic considerations. Cardinal Matteo Zuppi's mission as a special envoy was precisely to address these agonizing humanitarian dimensions, including the harrowing issue of prisoner exchanges, a lifeline for countless families, and the deeply sensitive, internationally condemned issue of the repatriation of Ukrainian children reportedly taken to Russia. While Cardinal Zuppi's previous direct access to Putin had been frustratingly limited, this unprecedented phone call between the pontiff and the president signifies a new, higher level of direct engagement on these particularly sensitive and critical humanitarian issues. It offered a flicker of hope for those yearning for news of loved ones. The article subtly hints at Russia's own framing of humanitarian efforts, which often differs significantly from international perspectives. While the Vatican emphasizes the urgent, universal need for aid, and the compassionate necessity of prisoner exchanges. The Kremlin, according to previous reports, has primarily focused on their efforts to reunite children with their families, a narrative designed to counter accusations of forced deportations and child abductions. The exact nuances and specific commitments made during this aspect of the conversation remain behind closed doors, locked within the confidentiality of a private call. However, the mere fact that both leaders raised these profound humanitarian points suggests a shared, if perhaps differently motivated, recognition of their paramount importance in the current geopolitical landscape. Faith and freedom, the ecumenical dimension of diplomacy. A fascinating and highly significant aspect of the conversation, uniquely revealed by the Vatican's readout, was Pope Leo XIV's direct, personal reference to Russian Orthodox Patriarch Kirill. Bruni stated that the Pope thanked him for the congratulations received at the beginning of his pontificate, and underlined how shared Christian values can be a light that helps to seek peace, defend life, and pursue genuine religious freedom. This was far more than a simple, polite acknowledgement of well wishes. It was a strategic, deeply considered ecumenical gesture, an audacious attempt to leverage a common spiritual heritage and the profound bonds of shared Christian faith to foster dialogue and, ultimately, peace. The relationship between the Vatican and the Russian Orthodox Church has been, for years, deeply strained, exacerbated to a critical degree by the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, given Patriarch Kirill's strong, unequivocal public support for the Russian invasion. However, the Pope's appeal to shared Christian values was a powerful summons to a higher moral ground, a subtle but firm suggestion that despite profound political and ecclesiastical divisions, the fundamental tenets of faith should compel both leaders, spiritual and temporal, to actively seek reconciliation and pursue justice. The phrase "genuine religious freedom" within the Pope's statement was also highly significant and carries multiple layers of meaning. It subtly addressed Russia's persistent criticisms of Ukraine's recent actions, which have included controversial moves to ban the Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine and outlaw ties with Russian-based religious organizations, measures Kyiv argues are necessary for national security. By bringing this sensitive topic up in a positive light, framing it as a shared value that both Christian leaders should uphold, the Pope potentially created a delicate space for future, more substantive discussions on religious liberties, all without directly endorsing one side's specific political narrative. It was an exercise in finding common ground amidst a sea of division, a surprise call, context, calculation, and future implications. The very fact that this phone call happened at all is, as the article unequivocally notes, a surprise. It shatters a discernible pattern of over 2 years of direct non-communication from Putin with the head of the Catholic Church, a policy of deliberate distancing that Moscow had maintained with steadfast consistency. The timing of the call was also particularly intriguing, adding a layer of strategic speculation to the momentous event. The article highlights a separate, yet perhaps consequentially timed development. U.S. President Donald Trump also spoke by phone with Mr. Putin on the very same day. Trump's social media post after his call revealed Putin's strong promise to respond to Ukraine's recent drone attack on Russian airfields, a stark and uncompromising declaration that stood in direct opposition to Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky's ongoing dismissal of any Russian ceasefire proposals. This parallel call, occurring on the same day as the Papal-Putin exchange, immediately raised a flurry of strategic questions. Was Putin seeking to leverage his conversation with the Pope, a figure of global moral authority, to present a more balanced, perhaps even compassionate image to the world before his high-profile call with Trump? Or was it a more calculated tactical move designed to demonstrate his willingness to engage with diverse global leaders, even as he simultaneously solidified and toughened his stance on the war front? The article's observation that Trump's social media post showed none of the frustration that the U.S. president had recently expressed with Putin over the prolonging of the war further muddies the already complex waters of international diplomacy surrounding the Ukrainian conflict. Just days before this unprecedented phone call, Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Vatican Secretary of State, had meticulously clarified the Holy See's precise role in the ongoing conflict. He emphasized that the Vatican was not offering itself or any of its officials as a traditional mediator, as neither side had specifically requested such a role. Instead, the Holy See was simply offering itself as a neutral, protected venue for potential talks. This distinction is crucial to understanding Vatican diplomacy. The Holy See's mission is to facilitate, to create the necessary conditions for dialogue, to foster trust and open channels of communication, rather than to impose solutions or take a partisan stance. Pope Leo XIV himself had already demonstrated a remarkably proactive and compassionate stance regarding Ukraine early in his pontificate. He held a private, significant conversation with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky after his installation. Zelensky, notably, made the effort to attend both the funeral of Pope Francis and the inauguration ceremony for Pope Leo, underscoring Ukraine's earnest desire for continued, direct Vatican engagement and support. This consistent, bilateral engagement with both sides of the conflict, however difficult and fraught with geopolitical complexities, remains a hallmark of the Holy See's patient and persistent diplomacy. The ultimate future impact of this unprecedented telephone conversation remains profoundly uncertain. It did not, by all accounts, produce an immediate breakthrough, a sudden ceasefire, or a dramatic, game-changing shift in the brutal conflict. The deep-seated historical grievances, the clashing geopolitical narratives, and the ongoing hostilities continue to define the grim reality on the ground. However, the very act of direct communication between these two highly influential global figures after such a prolonged and seemingly insurmountable silence is in itself a significant, indeed pivotal, development. It keeps the lines of communication open, even if tenuously. It keeps the fragile flame of hope flickering. It allows for the possibility, however faint and distant, that patient diplomacy, grounded in a universal moral imperative for peace and human dignity, can, over time, begin to thaw even the most frozen and intractable of conflicts. The world watches with bated breath, ever hopeful, as the delicate, often agonizing dance of dialogue continues. The call has been made. The seeds of dialogue, however small, have been planted. Now, the arduous, painstaking work of nurturing them, of building trust where none seems to exist, truly begins. The unwavering call for peace, the deepest aspiration of humanity, endures.